The opposite of the rhythm often is just heaping obligations. And so people are like, you need to do evangelism, you need to do service projects, you need to have a date night, you need to have more time with your kids. You start to get you get kind of these shoulds, right? That
should
on you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't, nobody is helping you, like Jesus said about to the Pharisees. You heap obligations on people, but you don't lift a finger to help. And what that means is you have to have a framework that actually balances, because these are real trade-offs. I mean, it's hard to decide how to spend your time. So that's where I really like to train people in frameworks that balance and that honor the fact these are hard trade-offs. But you can design your ideal week, and that doesn't just include having to do things that are challenging, but it also includes all the stuff that is life-giving. It needs to be both full of all the things that God has for us and incredibly life-giving, so at the beginning of the next week you have more energy than you did the week before.
Welcome to the Everyday Disciple podcast, where you'll learn how to live with greater intentionality and an integrated faith that naturally fits into every area of life. In other words, discipleship as a lifestyle. This is the stuff your parents, pastors, and seminary professors probably forgot to tell you. And now, here's your host, Caesar Kalinowski.
Hey, here we go again. Are you ready? Are you ready for another episode of the Everyday Disciple podcast? We're gonna dive deep into some cool missional stuff. I got a crazy, amazing guest with you today. I was a little fluttery, couldn't even wait to have him on. Tell you more about that in a minute. You know what dawned on me this week? We had our 4-year anniversary of the podcast like a couple months ago, at least, and I forgot to even tell you that. I can't even believe it's been 4 years of doing the podcast with no breaks every Monday for over 4 years. And we started, the podcast used to be called the Life School Podcast, and I did it with my friend and brother Heath Holmesby. You still hear him at the beginning and the end and all that, and we're still pals and all that. But here we are 4 years into it, and now we're called the Everyday Disciple Podcast, and onward and upward we go. Amazing. And what makes this so great is you, that we know that you're listening and that you're hopefully sharing the podcast out to other people. When you hear something meaningful, I hope you do. I hope that's like a natural response. You're like, oh, that was so good. God's put somebody on your mind. Take the 2 seconds it takes to share that episode out, either a link to that episode to our page or the Facebook group, or just text somebody, hey, this episode of this was great. I think you're going to love it, or whatever. We really appreciate it. That's how we grow. That's how we all pay it forward. Don't forget to join us on the Facebook group over there in Facebook land. If you haven't done that yet, we're easy to find, Everyday Disciple Podcast, or you can just go to everydaydisciple.com/Facebook, and it'll take you right in. Hope you'll do that. Love to hear from you. Love to talk about the episodes. Okay, let me tell you about today's guest. All right, I'm stoked. This is my friend. I think I can call him that now. We're actually becoming friends. His name's Jeremy Pryor, and Jeremy and his wife April, along with their 5 kids, they live in a multi-generational household on mission together, along with Jeremy's parents. April's mom has lived with them, and they live in Fort Thomas, Kentucky, which is just a few miles outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. And Jeremy and his wife, like Tina and I, are serial entrepreneurs and have been involved in ministry from early days, but it's morphed into really their family on mission and moving towards that. They have founded and led several businesses and nonprofits together, including a family quilt shop that the whole family runs, and a bunch of tech companies that are huge, and I can't even barely understand what they do. And they have created family teams, which They develop training content for families and all the stuff we're going to talk about today. Really cool. They've started a network of Cincinnati disciple-making households with the goal of seeing 1,000 households in and around Cincinnati live as kingdom outposts. It's called 1KH. It's amazing. For fun, the Pryors, they study Hebrew like they're nerds. I'm kidding. And they actually take groups to Israel. You're going to find out that's where actually they met as a couple, and they love Tolkien. But you've heard me talk about our family as Team K for years now, and the lifestyle that Tina and I have intentionally built around being a family team and a family on mission. Well, Jeremy and April have been doing the same thing as well for 15 years or more. And even though I originally knew of Jeremy through some very similar work on teaching the Bible through story and narrative, it wasn't until they recently joined Tina and I in one of our coaching cohorts, along with 7 other couples in their 1KH Cincinnati City network there, that we really got to know them. And I had no idea the depth of their journey and a lot more amazing similarities in how we have been led to form our families and why, we call ourselves Team K and they're Team Pryor and all this. Anyway, and the results that we've experienced. And so I'm really excited for you to hear a little bit of their story. It's just Jeremy on today. April is not on with us, but to hear a little bit of their story and how their family has really become a team and give you some advice on how you might also be able to get started more intentionally towards living that life as well. Give this a listen. I'll come back at the end and I'll wrap things up. All right. Well, I am excited to have this conversation with you, man. It has been too long that we've had these parallel paths, yet different, but we're finding out we have more and more commonalities in our sort of family life and ministry trajectories. And so I'm just going to start having you on the show every other week or something. No, you're like, I don't have time for that. Anyway, let's start with the basics about you and April. Like just a little bit how long you've been married and like what your marriage and family life looked like as you started. I'm guessing the stuff we're about to talk about and this richness of the family life is probably not exactly how it started off. So like, what are some of the basics of you guys and what your marriage and early child rearing life looked like?
Yeah. So this is exciting, Caesar. Thanks for having me on. So we've been married for about 22 years and have 5 kids. And we met actually in Jerusalem, which was a big part of our story and how God led us into thinking about family differently. And ever since then, we've been trying to figure out what it looks like.
Was that like class? You were at a class or something?
Yeah, we were both doing a semester abroad. Yeah, graduate school. And we're there to study Hebrew and try to figure out some things. I was like kind of obsessed at the time with the Old Testament, trying to understand that stuff. And we met. Great. And it was awesome that God kind of used that in our lives.
22 years. Okay, so then get married. I'm guessing within X amount of time, you start having babies.
Yes.
And
what's
the original? What's the original family life look like for you guys? Because I know you're also, here's another parallel in our life. You're a serial entrepreneur, as am I and Tina. So, we're always in startup mode of some form of something, trying an idea out or scaling something or whatever. What did that early life look like for you and the kids? Because you have 5 now, right? You said?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
What did that early marriage and little kids look like?
I was a youth pastor when we first got married. And then about 2 years into that, decided to do graduate school, moved out to Boston. We had just Kelsey, and then we had Jackson. So we had 2 little kids. And I was kind of thinking I was sort of fleeing from traditional church and didn't think that I was going to really figure out how to fit in that form, but loved the church and just like wanted to figure out there's a lot of tension for me in that. And I started to want to really experiment with, things that were just a lot more relational kind of models of church, but it was like, who's going to pay you for that? So God really rescued us and gave us an idea for a business. We started the world's largest Lord of the Rings collectibles online store back in 2001 before the movies, and kind of rode that wave. And it was such a blessing because we made so many mistakes trying to figure out going from, full-time ministry to full-time entrepreneur life, with 2 kids, and then we had 3 more, and then we started multiple businesses after that. So we've been primarily entrepreneurs starting companies, but every time we had success in a business, we would sort of parlay that extra time into ministry. That was kind of our, what we felt like was kind of the right fit for us. So I've probably been, spending 10, 20, 30 hours a week doing ministry for most of the last, 20 years, but not really paid ministry, just trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah. And that's exactly how it's been for Tina and I. As we had businesses grow and become more and more successful, instead of just trying to chase every possible drop of, profit out of whatever, we would buy margin back.
Yes.
For ministry, for additional family stuff, I did quite a bit of overseas, ministry and stuff that changed our lives forever. And I was able to take my family on some of that stuff. Some of it was like war zones and things. Didn't take them there, but same way. What was the sort of the thrust of your early ministry when the kids were younger, but you weren't being vocationally paid for it anymore?
Just trying to figure out I had a really profound experience in a small group that felt like family. Like it felt like so relationally rich. And it was so the opposite of what I had experienced in a lot of larger church environments. And I kind of had this, desire that if this is the church, if we're supposed to be really connected at a heart level, then I'm all in. And so that became the one another's, really getting to be on mission with like a small group of believers. That really resonated deeply with me, and so I wanted to understand how that would play out. Is that okay? Is that in balance? Can you call that church, or is that something else? And so that's kind of like the first 5 or 10 years. We're just trying to figure out, like, how do you make disciples? How do you be on a mission? And how do you do this in a very tight sort of life on life kind of way?
And we talk about all the time, and this isn't my original quote, but we talk about a lot of people involved in like professional ministry or vocational ministry. They sort of have their family, and then over here they have their ministry.
Right.
And then some people kind of have a family that has a ministry. It's like family plus a mission.
Yes.
Right? But then you get some people that have a family on mission. Like, this is sort of our family and how we roll, good, bad, or indifferent. We're doing this together,
Yes.
And sure, everybody has their own life and their own people and their lives and all that, but the nucleus, the core of this whole thing is us. Yes. And that's what people are actually wanting to join and get involved in. That's been a very similar journey for you guys.
Yeah, for sure. I think for us, and it was like when I was growing up, and when I was in my early 20s, when I first met April, I didn't really understand why people wanted to even have kids. Like, that was kind of a little bit of a mystery to me. I grew up in the Seattle area, so there was just not a lot of good modeling in the culture. We saw some in the church, and my family was together, but for the most part, I just saw divorce was the norm with all my friends. Mm-hmm. And so it just felt like an experiment that had gone bad. And when we were in Israel, we had encountered so many Jewish families that had these multi-generational roots. And I was like, where did they get this idea? Like, I've never even seen this idea. And when I asked them, they said, well, it came from the Bible. And I'm like, well, where? What part of the Bible? And they say, Abraham. And I, really? So, because I had studied Abraham, but I'd never thought about the fact that all of that stuff he said about his descendants was something that is true about family and how God sees family. I just thought that was a primitive part of their culture. And when I began to think about family as something that we could build multi-generationally together as a team, it was a massive paradigm shift. And then, from there, it went from being, a pretty low priority in my life to what you just described. Like, oh, this is not one of many things I have to manage. This is the vehicle through which I do everything, through which I do mission, through which I do business, through which, that was a huge realization. And there are families all over the world who think that way, but they don't tend to be Western families, especially, in the cultures that I grew up in.
And I want to suggest, and I'm going to guess you're going to probably agree with me here, I think it was God's original design for the family.
Yes.
I really do. And we take that all the way back to, like, that's a gospel issue. You think about, we are created in the image of a God that exists in community. Yes. And you've got this somehow mysterious 3-in-1 submission for God's glory and, all togetherness. And then God gives us a oneness of flesh with our spouse, and then these image bearers that ultimately bear his image. Yes. And how we live together in a family and our marriages, to me, are the strongest image of who God is and what he's like, and ultimately the gospel, like laying your life down for others, preferring others, shouldering the weight of people's sin and bad choices for each other. Why? Because I love them to the point of death. I would give my life for my kids. I know you would too. Like, no hesitation. It wouldn't be like, I got a lot going on. It's not right. And so I think this is God's biblical design, and the breaking of it, and the fracturing of it. It's not even like an East versus West cultural thing.
Right.
It's a losing of that true understanding of who God's created us to be in his image for his glory, and why we even have a spouse and kids. Those kids they're not created in my image. I mean, they look a little like me on the outside, right? But they're created in his image ultimately, as we were, for his glory, not mine, not to make me look like super dad, or look how smart they are, or look at, man, my son's making way more money than you're, It's like, no, that's not the point. And once that dime dropped for us, I know it changed a lot.
I know that what I didn't realize was that, and you believe like me that story matters, and that even when people hear this, they don't realize that there's actually a more powerful story that they're probably believing And that is the typical Western family. If you're a Christian or not, you think that family is a springboard for individual success. That's what you think it is. That's the story you believe. And when you think about the life of your family, that's the story that you're telling yourself. That's the story that's we're immersed in. And that's a very different story than a team. Springboard for individual success and a multi-generational team on mission, those are two totally different stories. And like you said, Genesis 1, when God created the first family, you see exactly how he defined it. He told them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it and rule. So he's basically saying that you are a team. You can only do this together. It's multi-generational. You can't do this mission in one generation. And you're to rule, which means it's the family it's that group that does the work. It's not the nonprofit or the corporation. It's not the government. There's a not that those things aren't important, but the basic unit, the basic team through which you live life, and everyone gets to live life, is through the family. And so that was God's original design. And then that gets, of course, translated into our life today as the church. And we're getting to extend that to all of God's children. It starts with having that belief that God actually designed this to be a team.
And that's a key thing there. And we're getting to extend that outward to others to get the lost children back home. You know,
yes.
I get a lot of pushback, Jeremy, and we've even had some of these conversations in coaching, where it's like, I want to really treat everyone like family. And it's like, then we proof text a couple verses, say, yeah, but there's only those people, who've said the magic prayer are children of God or something. It's like, well, no, that's not actually the whole picture. There's a bigger story arc here. And so we've kind of adopted the language is like, they're all God's offspring. They're all his image bearers out there. And some kids are far from God. They're far from dad. They don't know him. They don't understand his heart. They don't know the love that he has and the sacrifice that our brother Jesus made and all those things.
Right.
So I want to treat them like family and invite them to a place at ultimately dad's table and hopefully redeeming that relationship. I think that's how God does it. It's not some mystical, like I was walking down the road hating everybody, and all of a sudden one day I picked up a quarter off the floor and boom, I was a senior pastor at a church. It's like it's through others, inviting them to walk in the ways and taste and see. No, this is God's design for humans, for family. And it can be this way, even if you've never experienced it, which is sad, but true.
Well, a lot of people don't understand is that we kind of, we are living inside of a nested story, kind of like those Russian nesting dolls. There's our family, but our family's nested inside this, this other bigger story about what God's doing with his bride in the church, which is nested inside this bigger story, which is how God desires to really recapture all of humanity. It goes from Genesis 1 all the way to the end of Revelation. And so you can fixate on smaller stories, and sometimes, we live our life kind of from the center out. But man, you need to be careful that you don't become only that smaller story, that you have to see the bigger picture.
Well, and that's the context that we actually live in. And some people call that awareness. Some people call that higher consciousness, and it starts sounding Ouija and all this, But that's the reality. If you live so myopically focused, just reactively dealing with this issue, this problem, this thing, this little goal, and you never understand the larger picture, the larger story, the larger aspect of the nesting doll. Wow, what a small little life you live when you're created for so much more. Tell me a little bit about your life now. Your kids, give us their ages again real fast.
Yeah, so Kelsey's 21, Jackson's 20, Sydney is 16, Elisa is 14, and Kyra's 12.
Okay, so they're kind of all along a little bit older kids, some of them starting to move out or go to college age and all that. What's the rhythms of Team Pryor right now? What's the rhythms of your family life? You guys live pretty uniquely in a sense of, because of your businesses and stewardship of things, you've been able to create a bit of an alternative thing, but tell us a little bit of how you live, where you live. You don't have to give us our address or anything like that, but, the way you live is multi-generational and quite an oikos existence. So don't be shy. You're boasting in what the Lord has done and called us and created us to do, but it's a beautiful thing. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So like you just use the word oikos, that just means household. And so when I described a multi-generational team on mission, that's not just a nuclear family. That's a larger family unit, especially as your kids get older. And so like we live multi-generationally. My parents live with us. My mother-in-law was living with us. And our kids are getting older now, becoming adults, kind of moving in and out of the home. And so our typical week, it's a big, like the way that we try to figure out how to do ministry, because there's so much to manage if you're going to try to be a household. And when I say that, I mean that the household becomes the hub through which you do economic activity, through which you do spiritual life. So much of our life happens in and through the household. And in order to really manage that, you need a framework for that. And our favorite framework is the 7-day rhythm. We kind of craft a 7-day rhythm. We work from rest, and so our week begins. We have a Sabbath day on Saturday. We get to enjoy on Friday night. We do a big Sabbath dinner, and then Saturday we do our day of rest. And then April and I get our date night on Saturday night. My dad comes in and does game night with the kids. And so Sunday we call our soft launch into the work week. That's where we do our family meeting. And so like from 11 to 12, we talk about what's going on this week, what kind of business stuff we're going to do, what kind of spiritual stuff we're going to do, what's everybody up to, what's your highs and lows. And then Sunday we do our church gatherings in the evening. We do one-on-ones with the kids, and they do with each other as well. And then we launch into the week pretty hard on Monday. We got multiple businesses. My son does real estate with us, my daughter, and then April, my wife, and then her mom, my mother-in-law, all run a sewing studio at the top of our street. And so that's kind of like 50% like brick and mortar store, 50% e-commerce business. And so they've got a big live show they have to prep for every Wednesday. So Monday we do
every Wednesday they do a live show like at the shop.
They do, yeah. That's a huge. It's been really, really helpful. Through COVID, their business has tripled because of that, which was shocking because brick and mortar retail doesn't do super well when everything gets.
Are they also
down,
streaming that live show these days?
Yeah, it's streamed live on Facebook.
All right, listen,
PM.
I'm not shy. What's the name of that? People are going to go I want to see this.
Yeah, it's called Just Sew. It's in Fort Thomas, Kentucky. So if you're into quilting or sewing or fabric or whatever, you'll see my wife and my daughter, doing a.
Well, let me tell you a little something about me that you probably don't know.
Yeah,
I'm super, super into. I'm just kidding.
I was getting excited. Yeah.
No, it's awesome. My mom would have been all over it. I mean,
yes.
she has sewn, quilted, crafted, crocheted, everything. We have it like my mom has since gone to heaven, but our house is full of stuff she made, and I know it's not just us. It's like all kinds of extended family people.
Yes, well, that's a big reason why April did it, was to be a bridge for generations. Her mom was super into it. Kelsey was getting really into it, and so to create that continuity for them, and then also it's happening for other families that felt like it really resonated with our family's calling to do a little endeavor like that. So that's a big part of what we do. Yeah, we do a Bible study with the family on Monday with our community. And that's kind of we all read the same passages.
Define that when Scripture. You say with our community. What's that mean?
So yeah, our community is those who we gather with on a regular basis, and we kind of really try to function as a body, those one another's with each other. And so they come to that midrash, we call it. So it's like about an hour and a half where we just kind of look at the passages we've been reading together and just have discussions about what this means for our lives. And Tuesday,
would some people call? I'm sorry to interrupt you there, brother. Would some people call that a missional community? Or is it,
for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it goes in and through our household, and so some of the aspects that are missional will come out of the different households that are a part of and a lot of stuff we do together. Yeah. So we're trying to do an open table on Thursday night, and so that's where people can bring their non-believing friends, and then we can get to know each other. Also, we try to pull off little events. I was telling you about my whiskey and wisdom. My favorite thing where we talk philosophy and
it's your version of cigar and theology.
That's right.
It's different, smarter guys. Whiskey and wisdom.
We just watch YouTube videos about philosophy, and we get we think we know what we're talking about, but it's a good way to have a conversation. We enjoy it. And
is that what you do? You watch a video and then tear it apart?
Yeah, I just send out hey guys, watch a bunch of videos on this philosopher. If you haven't read their stuff, a lot of times we just can't understand half the stuff they wrote. But there's incredible videos, so it makes it really easy for anybody to engage in that conversation. Yeah.
Well, you know what else is super creatively great about that is most people would hear that and go, "Oh, I should start doing something like that." How would I ever have the time to prepare it? You're just sending out YouTube videos. Watch this stuff. We'll talk about it. You know. And I'm like, that's brilliant. The only prep is I got to just pick a few videos, and that's something you like. And so it's not oh my gosh, I don't know any. I couldn't pick those, but there's other things I could. I know people have done similar things where you get together and you discuss a movie. and you try to see like the movements, creation, fall, redemption, restoration through it or something like that. Or like, where's the, like, or you just look through the hero's journey and see, can we map that out? And then you're just kind of discussing life connected to that movie and the thing behind the thing. That'd be I love movies, right? And a lot of people do. I have to just point that out. That's such a cool creative way. I didn't know you were doing that. I thought you're prepping up all this brainiac stuff around this certain philosopher. And all right, man, cool. Yeah. All right. So I hope folks are hearing this, that there's this nucleus sort of gravitational center of the family, and it's extended and it's a little multi-generational. And then there's also aspects of it, though, that then have sort of the believing ring of relationships that are a part of that oikos, that extension of the family. But then you've also made room and intentionalized this open table so that all those folks can say, we got a friend of ours keeps hearing about all this, and this is a place that we would say is high invitation and low challenge. They can come, and we're not trying to talk them into signing up for anything or joining some deep Bible study thing they're not ready for. We want them to see and taste that this family that lives in the kingdom, this is a beautiful, wonderful place. And people to be with, more people more than a place. That's awesome. I love it. Now, intentionality is a big theme then obviously for you in April. And I know it just from getting to know you guys through our coaching and all. But intentionality is one of those things that we all long for, but it's like the old get round to it thing. Remember, we used to be able to go to vacation places. They always had the little round to it slug, whatever. And I know the people you train and help also start to create family life that's similar to what you're describing here. Intentionality, it's not going to accidentally happen. Let's talk about intentionality when it comes to leading our families toward health and wholeness.
Yes. Yeah, it's huge. Well, that's where I feel like it's important to, first of all, have a vision of family that makes sense of why you'd be intentional. I think for a lot of mothers and fathers, they just, if your vision for the family is a nest that's going to self-destruct as soon as the kids get older, that's maybe a little bit harder to build something that to really pour a lot of intentionality on it. But if you see your family as a family line, in other words, you're stewarding from generations previous, you're stewarding it for a short period of time and are going to pass that on. Now it makes a lot of sense that you would invest a lot in this family, and that for me that was really what gave me the energy to get excited about. Man, I get to steward this family for a short period of time, and I want to really make sure that my ceiling is their floor, and that was a vision that I could get excited about, and so that was one element, and then from there it becomes about for us really practical rhythms. That's been the most figure out how do you balance all of the activities of a household, and it is a puzzle, but it's not an unsolvable puzzle. But you need a framework that'll make it accessible so that you don't get overwhelmed.
Yep, exactly. And that's another one of our overlaps. Like even though we didn't know it, but because we're big on rhythms, I don't want to have to recreate this. I want a simple, reproducible framework that we kind of all seed into, and we're all kind of living into already. But we're just going to bring a little intentionality now. Jointly to this, and the thing is this stuff can be hard at first or seem a little bit weird at first, but the point of a rhythm and the beauty of rhythms is they just become easier and easier, and pretty soon you realize it's lifestyle. We're not that consciously having to think about family dinner night. We had a family dinner night last night. Not that many people made it this week. It was just stuff was going on. There were some people out of town. My son-in-law, he's a firefighter. He was working an extra shift, so not everybody made it. But we have a little pickup game tonight, and we're doing Team K pizza night, over at my daughter's place. It's like, all right, great, It's just the way it happened. Not because, oh my gosh, we had to clear the decks and compare 16 calendars and all this. It was like because the rhythm of our family is to make sure we see each other and have that meaningful family dinner time. Since it was a little fractured, well, we just fixed it.
Yeah.
And I already know there's going to be some not Team K folks at it. I already know that because we were talking about it. And because our kids live like we do. So guess what? They got a broken family living with them right now. Some folks that need a little help, right? I'm sure you guys have had that throughout your whole marriage and life as well.
Well, I think we tend to have the opposite of the rhythm often is just heaping obligations. And so people are like, you need to do evangelism, you need to do service projects, you need to have a date night, you need to have more time with your kids. You start to get you get kind of these shoulds, right? That you piled on you. Yeah. And you don't nobody is helping you, like Jesus said about to the Pharisees, you heap obligations on people, but you don't lift a finger to help. And what that means is you have to have a framework that actually balances, because these are real trade-offs. I mean, it's hard to decide how to spend your time. And so that's where I really like to train people in frameworks that balance and that honor the fact that these are hard trade-offs. But you can design your ideal week, and that doesn't just include having to do things that are challenging, but it also includes all the stuff that is life-giving. And that kind of balance can bring, until you love your week, you need to keep kind of tweaking and working on it. It needs to be both, full of all the things that God has for us, and some of those things can require some work and some challenge, and incredibly life-giving, so that at the end of every week, at the beginning of the next week, you have more energy than you did the week before. Now, I know there are seasons where young families man, that sounds like a impossible dream. But, that's when you said part of this is that rhythms allow you to focus on the things that repeat. And when you focus on things that repeat, they do get easier. You start cracking codes and you start holding on to lessons. And so instead of having to reinvent the wheel constantly, you actually start to feel the incredible traction that your family can get. And I would say for us, living into a rhythmic life now for over 15 years, we're just at a different place. Like there's a level of productivity and peace that we could never have seen 10 years ago. But you have to start from wherever you're at and begin to add, elements to your rhythm one at a time, and be willing to upgrade those things until they work really well for your family. And when you start to discover there's something you're missing, it's kind of simple what to do. Okay, where is this going to fit in our week? Is this sustainable? And then you start tweaking it until that starts to work and fit.
And I can't really underscore that enough, that like what you're saying here is these rhythms produce a week that you love and brings you energy, which then gives you the energy to include more people, right?
That's
and
right.
Be outward, have that outward focus. Like, well, who else might God have for this? And when people first hear this, and like you just mentioned with little kids, perhaps, it sounds like, oh, that just sounds like work to me. And I'm like, but here's the thing. And this is like lately, God's really been tapping my heart about this. Living reactively, where you just react. Everything's a problem to solve, and then you go to bed tired, and then you do that all week, and then all month, and then pretty soon your kids are grown. What you've done, instead of proactively, intentionally living your life, like these are the rhythms we're going to have, and we're going to protect some of this, and we're going to build in others, instead of accidentally never get to that. And that is free. That's freedom. Because when we only live reactively, like, oh, the boss said this, and then this happened here, and then this broke, and then this person was upset. And so all we're doing is reacting. What we're doing is we're kind of giving control of our lives to a zillion other people. That's why I feel out of control. And as soon as you start to intentionalize within that larger framework of understanding who God has created us to be and who we get to be and how we get to live, and you start to intentionalize that, knowing God's given us that authority, that privilege, that freedom, not only does it get easier and richer, but we take back the choice that God's given us, right? God's given us choice instead of just reacting like that and then being upset and blaming everybody else for everything. Oh my gosh. We're talking a whole different way of understanding life here.
Yeah, totally different lifestyle.
It's so big. Do you think this is possible for most families? I'm thinking people are listening to this going, man, that's pretty alternative. And we've been listening to you and Tina talk about Team K for years. But I think it's one of those things where they would love to have it and enjoy it. Do you think it's possible for others to achieve?
Yes. Well, I think that you have to be aware that everything in Western civilization that is designed is designed around individuals. And this is what makes it hard. It's not that having a family be a team is hard. It's that church and school and sports and even shopping and everything, and even social media now is separated by age group. And so everything is designed to pull your family into its individual parts. And so now, why not just have little compartments in your house called bedrooms, and just everyone's got their own TV, everyone's crushing their own Netflix or Amazon, whatever they're
device.
Into. Yeah, that's right. It's like, and so that's what's hard about it. It's not in and of itself hard. I think that in a lot of ways, once you begin to function like a team, a lot of things get easier. Like it's hard to live life without your team, but it requires some leadership and some coaching, to be coaching your team. But for sure, the hardness oftentimes comes because the culture will try to pull your family into its individual parts. And so that can be where a lot
that's
of
been the scheme of the enemy since forever.
Yeah.
Because back to the gospel, if our families are given to us as this beautiful picture of God and what he's like, the kingdom come, then what's the enemy going to attack? The image of God in us, that bond, that connection. So if I can keep isolating and get selfishness and or self-preference as my primary motivating factor, it breaks it down. I have to ask a couple of questions because I know people will ask this. They're going to write in and ask this. I'll tell you them both up front, and then you can answer them so I don't forget, okay? First one's going to be, I would love this, but my spouse is just, they don't have anything to do with it, or they would have no intentionality here, or they're too busy or something. So it's going to have to be me.
Yeah.
And then the second one would be, I would love this, but I think we've waited so long, it's probably too long because my teenage kids, I can't even get them to come sit and have a meal with me. How am I ever going to have a life as a family that has joint rhythms and a joint mission and friendships that overlap like crazy? So those are two different questions, but there's some roots that might be the same. And I'm sure you face these questions as you've helped, guide people and coach people as well. Yeah,
I have a lot of empathy for anyone who feels like, for that spouse who's resisting a totally a different story of how to do family. That is a very challenging thing to consider. And I think that for a lot of them, it's important that we be really gentle in sort of bringing this up and in having these conversations. Yeah, one of the things that we've used that has been most helpful, with COVID, it's been challenging, but we do these weekends where we try to just give couples space to talk about it, because shifting the vision of your family or the paradigm through which you see family is really intense. And so you really do need to that requires a sort of season of learning and considering. And so I would say that's usually when two of you come together around an idea like that, it requires that space, and you want to not make it feel like an attack, or an ultimatum. This is a really exciting possibility that potentially we should consider. What are the benefits of this, and what are the
see if we can both embrace this. Yeah, because you have to embrace it before you'll ever engage it, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then for anyone who's got older kids, man, there is no time that's too late for this. You can start from wherever you're at. I love talking to grandparents who have this epiphany and start to think about how grandparenting looks different when you start to think about your family like a team. There's not one size fits all. Every family is very different. How every team functions is very different. Your stories are different. These are really about values. And so when you start to prop up if you've valued individualism for the last 30 years as a family, it's not to say you can't start valuing team. You can. It's just that you have to understand that when you bring that value up, it'll probably be like cranking up a dial. Like, what's something we can do, this year? Like, could we do could we vacation together? Is there some kind of mission that we can do together? You have to start to woo the family as individuals back into the team. You have to oftentimes start by doing things like, just repenting to your team. Hey guys, I've been really championing the value of individualism, and there's some positive things about the value of individualism, but it's been to the detriment of team. And so, right now, I want to express to you guys, I really think God's made us to be a team. I don't know what that's supposed to look like. We can explore that together, and then baby steps from there, and see how people function. But if you start to use team language, that's very attractive and exciting to your kids. If it's not heavy-handed or guilt trippy or whatever, if it's an invitation into belonging to something bigger, and that they're a part of it, that's exciting. So if you have that
That's been our story.
You guys have seen that. Yeah.
That's been our story exactly. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. People are all looking for a team. They're at work and they get excited about their workplace. Why? Because it's starting to feel like a team. They're in their church and they're in a ministry team. Why they're excited? Because it's starting to function like a team. So this is not a value that people need to be convinced of in general. What they don't necessarily understand is that family can be a team. And if they start to see that, that's so exciting, because all those other things, businesses and ministries, they're much more transitory than family. So why not invest in the team, first of all, that God designed to be a team from the beginning, and secondly, those relationships are going to last the longest.
And I think people will hear some of these things and go, well, we're going to try a couple of things, but they'll try one thing and it'll fail. And then they're like, I'm done. And it's well, wait a minute, who's that loving? That's loving you. Yeah. And we tell people, you're not pouring cement. Don't get all hung up here. You're not pouring cement. Try something. Try something new. Try, different thing. Like we tried to get the kids to do this. They didn't want to do it. And we always start at the table. Like start having a meal together. And then guess what? Start getting where everybody gets to pick the meal. Like this week, this kid does, and this week dad gets to. It's like, and you learn to bear with one another, and you all going to help and prep. It's like, well, my kids aren't interested in that. Try it. You'll see.
Yeah.
It's going to be different than you might think.
Well, make
Everybody
it
likes
fun.
when they,
like make it, like you said, like if you think about what they want, or you give them some ownership in the process. What do you guys like to eat? What kind of vibe would you like to have at this family meal? Would you like to invite people and not invite people? Like, how do you want to do this? Like, let's try different things. The word you can always use if you really want to get buy-in and you think there's a lot of resistance is the word experiment. Hey, would you guys mind if we try this for 4 weeks or for 4 times? Let's do a family meal, and then we'll talk about it.
See how it went. See what we're learning.
Yeah.
What we like, what we don't like.
It'll work.
Yep.
They'll be excited. They'll usually be willing to do that, especially again if you think about like what it would make it exciting for them.
And what we found is the natural outgrowth of that. We didn't have to promote all that much. Once our Team K family dinner nights were that way, where they got to choose and pick and have fun, and we had music cranked, and it was a fun time, right? And then we also got to heart level stuff and all that. But once they started loving that, they were like, so I got to get so-and-so over here. Or like, my friend at school, her mom and dad are fighting a lot. And she's been, telling me and crying.
Totally.
Could we just have her over and like, Dad, tell her she's beautiful like you tell us every day. And like, she just needs to hear it. It's like, it wasn't like we had to go like, okay, now let's see. Which of your friends do you think? It was like natural. We never, and I would be willing to do that. I would, but we've never had to. And even now with our kids being grown and out of the house and having families, guess what the number one place to bring their friends to still is? Our house.
The family. Yeah, that family.
It's
we had a similar.
Yeah.
We had a similar experience where about 15 years ago, when we really started trying to do a weekly family meal pretty consistently. It was pretty chaotic. We were trying to figure things out. We had little kids at the time, and we went off on a retreat with people in our community, and there's about 5 or 6 families. And one of the exercises we said is, give us your 3 biggest milestones spiritually of your whole life. Kind of like, let's go deep. And we went around, and all 5 families that were there said one of their top 3 milestones was the first time they came to a family meal at the Pryor house. And me and April were shocked. We were like, what? That thing we're trying to figure out? Like, that was one of your top 3 most...
That messy, crazy time.
Yeah. And to your point, it's like just to see a family have a rich, meaning-filled meal where they felt they belonged did something to their spirit. And that's one of the times for me when the penny dropped that, oh my gosh, this is discipleship and evangelism wrapped up in one through the family. This family meal is absolutely critical.
I just experienced that like an hour and a half ago. My daughter and my grandson and granddaughter, they spent the night last night. They came over for family dinner, and not everybody was here. Daniel was on a shift, so she said, we're just going to spend the night. Like the dogs are here and the whole thing. And then we've got this pizza night planned tonight to kind of pick up the missing pieces of the team. And she said, I'm super a little, I'm kind of feeling fried, not the best. I don't know, maybe I'll cancel. I said, well, honey, you do you, but it's okay. And then she was talking to her husband about that. And he said, well, we've got this family staying with us. And wouldn't it be so much better if like your folks were over and, Sissy's over and all that. So like, they're going to be there for dinner anyway tonight. So better to have more of the family, more of the team. That'll be a blessing for them. It'll be easier for us. The whole thing. Yeah. So that's their thought line. In other words, they see the family as their greatest asset, resource, and thing to share.
Yes.
And we know these 2 people, but like kind of arm's length. You know what I mean? They're like someone who's kind of part of the extended family, part of the oikos. It's his family members that are kind of in a bad spot. So my daughter and her husband are helping him out and all that. So, but yeah, this is a must. What do you think would be step 1 for someone who says, okay, I want to dip into this like with my family? What do you think would be the first step a couple could take toward bringing a greater sense of team and unity and purpose to their family life? Maybe starting tonight or this weekend.
I would say that creating that weekly family meal and making it very special to you, and just whatever's sustainable to begin with. So yeah, pizza night. If you have to do like paper plates or whatever, maybe a special drink, something that will. If you have little kids and you like add some special drink, they'll ask you every week, like, are we doing that thing again? So make it sustainable, make it fun, and then just iterate on it, improve it over time so that it becomes more and more reflection of the values of your family. And we do this on, usually in our culture twice a year, Christmas and Thanksgiving. It's a tragedy. We're so out of practice that when we get to those meals, they're not great because we don't even know each other. But man,
all we do is fight. I hate it.
That's right.
It's like, come on, what?
But and this is what I learned in the Jewish culture in Israel. It was crazy to watch, 30, 40-year-olds, all of them getting on buses or driving to their parents' house every single Shabbat. And I was like, when I asked, like, how did they stay together multi-generationally? It's because they had this Sabbath dinner every single week. And if you start a weekly family meal, you will not be able to stop your family from becoming multi-generational. And from there, you can begin to insert the team elements, because now you start to feel like you belong to something. There's a place in which you experience your family-ness, and that's where it
starts to ground you in the understanding of the importance of identity.
That's right.
And as we make disciples, we talk a lot about identity, obviously, right? And I've been thinking about, why has it not been a big problem for our kids in Team K and some of our now, grown-up people we've discipled in their families? Why has their understanding of their gospel identity not been a hard thing to really believe and grasp? It's because they were grounded in a family identity. It's like, it's a big deal to be a part of Team K. It really is. Yeah. People love it, and to get to be called part of that. And as our daughters have gotten married, they're like, I'm not going to be a Kalinowski anymore. Maybe my husband will just take our name. It's like that. We don't bring that up. They bring it up.
Right.
But the goal is, as great as it is to be Team K, what's bigger and better is that you believe your gospel identity, who God's made us to be, and why Team K is this way.
That's right.
So that others you can live out of that. And I think when you ground your kids in identity, and they realize there is a team, there's people who are for me, regardless. Like, I don't have to choose perfectly, make every right life decision. Sometimes I'm going to screw up. I'm going to make bad choices, all that. But I know there's this core, there's this people, my team, my family, that are going to love and accept me regardless, and even help me shoulder some of the consequence going forward. When people come and experience that, that's why they're saying that a Pryor family dinner night was like one of their big markers in their life, because they go, whoa. We just tasted a little bit of what the kingdom of God is like.
Yeah.
It's not less than that, man. I'm not kidding you.
That's where the story ends at a table. Yeah. We're going to be sitting around a table. That's where we're headed. And that's the full expression of the kingdom. So it's like, why wait? Let's we think about every single family meal as a rehearsal dinner for that banquet of the Lamb that we're all looking forward to. Man,
that's awesome. Yeah. Well, and you think about the fall starts with it, with the eating, and then that's Jesus, right, when he gives us, the whole new covenant, it's at a meal. I mean, we could do episodes on that.
That's right.
Okay, we got it. This is so great, man. We got to wrap this up. Unfortunately, we always end with giving people the big 3 takeaways for this talk, for this topic, and we make it. It's like, you don't want to miss these 3 things that we just said. Yeah. If nothing else, here's the summary. And we always give those to people in a printable download. If they're interested in it, they can just go to everydaydisciple.com/big3, BIG3, and boom, we'll send it to you. What do you think would be the big 3 from this? What do you think people need to just know about this topic to get started?
Yeah. So the number one thing I would say in terms of is that to know that God designed the family to be a team. That if you're anywhere in Western culture, then chances are your family is the design of your family is to be a springboard for individual success. But God wants you to have a team, and so that's going to take a transition. The thing I want you to believe is that you can start from anywhere. Like it's never too late. You can start from here. It's not. There's so much that God can and wants to do through your family, and every generation is a step forward. You can't do all of it in one generation. So do what you're called to do in your generation and continue, and your family line will continue. And then what to do, like we just described, I would say the first thing is to craft that weekly family meal. That's uniquely your family meal. Let your kids really put their stamp on it. Make it an expression of your family culture. Make it a place where you celebrate the goodness of God. And as you do that, that identity will go deeper and deeper. And from there, you can launch into all kinds of things that are kingdom activities for the sake of the gospel.
Oh, man, really good. Wow, super concise. I want to also tell our listeners, if they've heard this episode or maybe they're newer to the podcast, we did an episode, number 273, a little while back, but you can scroll through and find it, how to have amazing family dinner nights. And we go through that whole thing and just give you some basics and practicalities and encouragement and tips. And if I'm remembering quickly, I think there's even like a link to a free download in that episode and all that. So you could, just Google that or go into your podcast world and just look how to have amazing family dinner nights. It was episode 273. So you can kind of scroll back and figure that out. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for being here. This has been amazing. This has been amazing. I knew it would be super fun, and I wish it was like super longer because there's a lot of stuff I want to ask you about. But like I kind of tipped my hand at the beginning, I plan to have you back. There's just too much overlap and too much wisdom that I want to mine for gold and act like I thought it up myself. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, thanks, Caesar. We so appreciate you and Tina and how much you guys have invested in us.
Oh, man, it's a blessing. I think this has all been God's design. All right, man, I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, getting to talk with Jeremy about all of that. I could have gone for hours and hours with him. He is seriously a brother from another mother for sure, and I'm excited for the journey to continue where our families are getting to know each other through the coaching and what we're learning from each other. There's so much more. I will definitely be having him back on the show again. I'm certain that you are encouraged and excited and probably upping your longing to live the life that we're hearing about and having our kids as part of things. And even as they're growing up, and they've taken it even further than us, where they actually do their economic aspect of their family team together. I've always kind of longed for it, that my kids might be involved in business with us. Two of my kids were. They worked at a restaurant we owned for years, but now as adults, they've gone off into different careers. I still have a little secret longing that we might get a little Team K business going together at some point. But right now, they're all happy, and so are we, but we get to do the rest of life together, just not our jobs or whatever. If you're interested in learning more about how to do this and get your own family living more on mission, and wherever you're starting from is good, and you want to move more towards discipleship and mission as a family, and how you can start living more in the ways that Jeremy and I talked about today, I'd love to tell you more about the coaching that Tina and I offer. That's a big part of what we do, because that's the basis. That's where we have to start, is living as a family on mission, and then outward to include more and more people and build out communities and then multiply leaders and all that. And I'd love to set up a short Zoom call to get to know you better and get to hear your story and answer any questions you have and tell you all about our coaching. If you're interested, go to everydaydisciple.com/coaching, everydaydisciple.com/coaching. There's a lot more information there and a little form you can fill out so I can know a little bit about you, and then we'll get a Zoom call put together and get in touch. All right. Join us next week. I'm going to be digging into something pretty sensitive in my own life's journey as we talk about living with a scarcity mentality. I've always felt that I inherited that from parents that were born into the Great Depression and the grandparents that lived through it and all that. Well, we're going to go pretty deep into what that's really all about, the thing behind the thing, and how the gospel and believing our true identity can lead us out of the tyranny of living with a scarcity mentality that colors so much of life and our work and all that. It's pretty heavy stuff. It's important stuff. Maybe you can relate. Well, I can't wait. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information on this show and to get loads of free discipleship resources, visit everydaydisciple.com. And remember, you really can live with the spiritual freedom and relational peace that Jesus promised every day.